You're listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. In the blue corner, we've got Mr. Karle supporting Tottenham. In the red corner, we've got Mr. Kenner supporting Arsenal. Together, they will be discussing all of your football views, all of your football news. So join us here on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode 18 of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle. With me is Geoff Saunders, West Ham. Geoff, hello.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Fantastic. We're on the back of watching Manchester United against Arsenal in the Premier League, so we're going to start our conversation with that. But before that, let us hear your trivia question for this week.
Germany won the World Cup in 1954, and that win was unique. It had never been done before and has never been done since and will never be done again. What was it that was unique? And let me give you a clue. It's got nothing to do with any of the matches played in the tournament.
Something particular with that team?
Yes.
All right, well, we'll find out the answer to that and much more at the end of the show. Let's start this show with the last week's round of games. Now, of course, we've got Watford losing again. We've got Tottenham scraping through finally. But I think we have to start with the game that you and I watched last night, which was Manchester United against Arsenal.
Yes, it was, but wasn't good, was it?
It was poor. It was. I mean, as a Tottenham fan, we worry a little bit about our form and our current situation, you know, disruptions in the dressing room. We may mention that later. Looking at those two teams, I think we've only got Leicester to worry about. Certainly not Man United or Arsenal. Neither team could keep possession.
No, they were terrible, both of them. I think if you take out McTominay, who actually should have been sent off after 20 minutes, and Saka, the forward for Arsenal, who had a great game.
Yes, he did, yeah.
The rest of them were pretty... Oh, and Daniel James played well.
Mm-hmm.
He was frightening when he got the ball going forwards. The rest of them, it was shocking. It was like watching... Well, I was going to say it's like watching a schoolboy game, only it wasn't. Schoolboy teams know how to defend. They know... They know the shape they should be in, and they can keep a back four line. Arsenal can't, and Manchester United can't. It was just shocking.
Both teams, you're right. Both teams look like. I mean, for me, both teams look like they just met that evening.
Yeah.
You know, these are your teammates. It's like an exhibition match or something.
Well, yeah, it's like, you know, one guy and 10 AN others all playing. You know, it was awful. I have to say, Twanzebe, the defender for Manchester United, looked very, very good. But the rest of them, God, they were bad.
Yeah, they looked lost. I mean, Pogba was back from injury, wasn't he? And he looked a little bit lost as well.
He strolled through it completely lost.
Yeah.
The problem was he started off as one of the two in the 4-2-3-1, and that's not his position. That was Pirlo's position when he was playing with Pirlo for Juventus. Pogba is an inside left. Pogba should be attacking, and yet in the second half, when Solskjaer made changes and brought in some other players and took off the useless Lingard, he was there in his position, didn't make any great attempt to look for the ball, to go find it, to shout, give me the ball. And he certainly wasn't given the ball. I mean, he was starved of the ball. But it's yet another game out of the very, very many that just simply passed him by.
It was, I mean, as I said, we watched it. He was playing very, I don't know, deep, if you like,
yes.
Pogba. He looked completely out. I mean, he was out of position. He looked a little bit lost as to what to do.
Yes. Yeah.
But again, because either he didn't have the foresight, or because the other players weren't making the moves that any manager would have asked them to make. They didn't look like there was a plan.
Well, presumably the plan was that he would be there like a quarterback in American football and spray the ball about,
like Rooney did in his late part of his career.
But who's he going to pass to? Because no one was making any moves to space.
So you can't really blame Pogba for not having a good game.
I don't think so.
To ping the ball too.
No, he was just put in the wrong position. McTominay had a very good game, albeit he should have been sent off for 2 bookable offences before he scored. I mean, and how he wasn't booked both times, he's a complete mystery to me. I mean, it's just they were both. One was borderline red anyway. He should have been off. But.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we can say this because it's a podcast. The referee was awful, wasn't he?
I think he was dreadful.
He wasn't. I mean, it's not like... referees have been accused in the past, unfairly, I think, of being biased towards Manchester United, especially when Ferguson was there. Last night, he was just biased against football, I think. Both teams had decisions not go in their favour or against them that shouldn't have happened or should have happened.
Well, I think
McTominay should have been sent off. That's the first one.
Yeah, I think in the first half he was very definitely a homer, as the people in the bar we were with kept saying. Second half, it was at half time it had obviously been pointed out to him, and he did what referees often do. He tried to redress the balance, and then started getting it wrong the other way.
That's the problem. When you start overcompensating, things tip over the wrong way again. There was you and I were sat together, and there was a handball that wasn't given against Arsenal. Should have been a penalty, and a little bit later he gave one against Arsenal again that probably was innocuous, just to sort of balance it out, as if to say sorry about the last one. Have that, and both teams were all over the place, and so was the referee.
The worst decision of the night, apart from not sending McTominay off, was disallowing the goal for Arsenal. And if you look at the photograph, there's a photograph where the linesman is staring straight at Maguire, who is 2 yards in front of the Arsenal player who scored, Aubameyang. How could he possibly wave his flag there? He's looking directly at the player who is playing Aubameyang onside by 2 yards, and yet he flagged. I mean, how can that possibly happen?
Yeah, I mean, if VAR, virtual assistant referee, is, to my mind, a great thing, great innovation. We need technology, but there was no need for the referee to have stopped the game to go to that. The linesman must have had his eyes shut. They did give the goal, didn't they, eventually? But there was no need to even go that way.
But they also created a problem. Because the linesman flagged, David De Gea is saying, well, I stopped because the linesman flagged. Now, I don't think that's true, actually. If you watch what happened, he does attempt to save the ball. But it's a valid point to raise. Because the flag was raised, the players react. Because they're taught to. The whistle blew. So they stopped. They're taught to.
They are, yes.
So
I hadn't thought of that, actually. That's
what they've got to do in situations like this is referee, linesmen don't flag, referee don't blow, follow it through to the end, then look at it on VAR. And we're now talking about a different sort of football entirely, aren't we? There were problems before VAR with referees, but to my mind it was better.
Really? Yeah, so you're old school a little bit, because I know our partner Steve Kenton is very much sort of, he prefers football as it was and it is now in many respects, not in all respects. I'm very much for you've got to move with the times. But last night's game, the Man United Arsenal game, when that decision initially, the referee went straight with the linesman, who was the line. If anybody was offside, it was the linesman, because he was well ahead of the play. He could perfectly see that Maguire was playing the player onside. 101 in linesmanship, that would have been your first lesson on he is onside, because it was so blatantly obvious.
But I think it's a valid question to ask, why did he give it offside? I mean, somebody's got to ask that question of him.
Yeah,
why did you give that offside?
It was so obvious, it would have been the photograph they use in a lesson to go, onside, next slide please, offside, and it would have been the opposite picture. So how and why he even considered giving that as offside?
I know.
Considering the position he was in.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways which they can make VAR better, and basically those ways are copy what they do in rugby. Everyone in the ground gets to see what is being looked at. They get to see the same film that the VAR officials get to see. Everybody understands exactly why a decision is made, and then I think people will be much, much happier. It's just all doing it in secret and it's rubbish.
I mean, last night with that decision, which was very odd. First of all, I want to go back just to the here thing, but it did go on the big screen, which then the TV cameras pointed at VAR checking, I think it said, which is of no information to anybody.
No.
It didn't say because of offside, it didn't show the decision. I mean, Man United, notorious for getting big crowds, 80-odd thousand possibly in that crowd, all stood there having paid 80 quid a ticket, going, what's happening? What am I not seeing? Which is a little bit suspicious. I do think the thing with the Kia is, there is a valid point. He may not have stopped. He may have slightly altered his decision-making process, having seen the flag. He may have been a little bit slower, or he may have been a step to the right instead of a step to the left. He can say what he likes in his defence for not saving it, but it is a valid point that actually flag went up.
Yeah.
Play would therefore stop.
Yes, and the referee blew his whistle.
And the referee also blew his whistle. Play to the whistle.
That's what you're taught from when you're knee-high to a grasshopper. Play to the whistle. Play to the whistle. Well, they did.
I mean, was it in a very completely non-fair way, but was it poetic justice because McTominay, who should have been sent off, scored for United earlier?
It got the correct result. So, yeah, I suppose it did. Yeah.
I mean, if it was a novel or a film, it would have been, yes, that's a fair result.
Let's face it, neither of those teams deserved to win, did they?
No, that was going to be my next point, was they were both pretty abject, weren't they?
Yeah, I just wish somebody could award negative points because that match deserved it.
Here are this weekend's results. Watford 5, Newcastle 2, Manchester United -1, Arsenal -2. In the second half, it did look like Arsenal was settling for a draw, and Man United desperately wanted to win but didn't know how.
Yeah, Manchester United are set up to be a defensive team that counter-attacks, and that has been clear under Solskjaer from the first day he took over. The worst thing you can do to a team like that is attack them, which Chelsea discovered on the first day of the season.
Yes.
Manchester United can counter-attack, particularly using Daniel James on the left because he's got pace. And as soon as Arsenal started to attack in the second half, they left themselves open at the back, and Manchester United looked dangerous. And for the last 20 minutes, they were the only team that looked like scoring.
They should have won it, really, United. But, an ordinary United team probably would have. The other thing I did notice from that game was how often, and England do it as well, and I've not seen it with other teams particularly, but England do it, how often both teams gave the ball away in such simple, not only in defence, but in midfield with nobody threatening them, nobody around them. I mean, it was almost as if they were giving the ball, saying, go on, you have a go.
Yeah.
Because both teams, equally to blame, I suppose, or equally guilty, were just giving the ball away. I mean, you said schoolboy errors. Really, these were schoolboy sort of situations where you should be hanging on to the ball, and they couldn't. Counter-attacking team or not, they couldn't actually hang on to the ball.
No, they couldn't. They looked good from back line up until halfway line, and then it was just like altitude sickness. Too high up the pitch, and they all start getting dizzy, and they can't pick out a pass. I mean, without Juan Mata on the pitch, they haven't got a clue how to unlock a defence. They don't know how to go about it. And when you look at that team that had Lingard in it, and Lingard is still an international, which is a mystery to me. The Man United guy to our right, Man United season ticket holder and fervent Man United, he says exactly the same. Lingard is useless. He shouldn't be playing for a team like Manchester United, let alone playing for England. Absolutely clueless.
Yeah, it was funny because Juan Mata was on the bench.
Yeah.
And
exactly who they needed last night.
Yeah, really, the one game probably where he could have changed things, and he was on the bench. Before we move on and leave Manchester United where they should be, behind, I just want to mention that Ed Woodward came out last week with some public support for Solskjaer, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
That was support, was it?
Yeah, support. Well, yeah,
Really?
yeah. This is what they call support. They have something which you can probably explain to us called the quarterly investors call last Tuesday, and Ed Woodward said it's important that we're patient while Ollie and his team build for the future. The problem is that Solskjaer then came out and said, I'm not sure if it was needed that he said that. Solskjaer is not known for his outspoken statements, particularly. They always say, that he's going to get sacked because the chairman has said, we're backing him. It's like the old cliche. But it sounds a bit like that to me.
The situation was that the chief executive of the company was asked a question by an investor. He must answer the question, and he must answer it truthfully. But obviously he doesn't want to give away anything that's remotely useful to anybody, because that's where we are in the corporate world. I think he said that the only thing that came into his head that what he thought was not contentious. Now, you can read it another way, and you can read it as sort of insulting towards Solskjaer, not really supporting him. And I think that's the way Solskjaer's read it. I think he could have chosen his words better. He could have been more positive, said something like, we're 100% behind Solskjaer as he undertakes this difficult rebuilding program, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I think that would have been much better. It would then have invited the question of, but you've been chairman and chief executive, and you've been signing off all these, £849 million worth of transfers. Why does it need rebuilding exactly?
Yes, well, that was kind of my take from it. Was he said we support Ole in his building for the future. It's kind of like, I've just given you 200 million. Where is it gone? Would have been the question of the investors' call.
Well, since Alex Ferguson left, it's £849 million they've spent. Since Alex Ferguson left.
It's a project in progress.
They're in their 6th year of rebuilding and have spent £849 million doing it.
In 6 years.
They are, if you look at their performance this season, they're worse than Crystal Palace.
With Manchester United and Arsenal in mind, let's have a look at some of the weekend's games just gone, because obviously the big takeaway from the weekend was, you said 4-0. You were close, but Leicester beat Newcastle 5-0. 5. And Newcastle, as ever, lucky to get nil. But Leicester are that good and Newcastle are that bad.
Correct. So and I think the difference between 4 and 5, just to make me look better than
your prediction
than I am.
Wrong.
That my prediction correct was that Newcastle had a player sent off, and I hadn't factored that in.
That unbalanced it, yeah. Otherwise, it would have been just the 4-0.
Would have been just the 4, yeah.
Not every team are beating Newcastle 5-0.
No.
There's something about that Leicester team. Now, you've said it many times that if you want to know how good a manager Brendan Rodgers is, ask him the time. Or something along those lines, because he'll tell you how good a manager is.
Yeah.
He has played down this week talk of Leicester being a top 4 team. Since he took over, only Man City and Liverpool have got more points than Leicester have.
Yes.
Obviously, if you had the season from when Brendan Rodgers took over till now, Leicester would be 3rd. And they are in the top 4 currently. So quite obviously, deservedly so. And they've lost Maguire.
They've lost Maguire, but they don't appear to be struggling without him, do they? They're every bit as good.
Is it Brendan Rodgers? Did he just inherit a good team?
He inherited a good squad, a squad of good players. He made 2 good signings. Pereira, the right back who came from Newcastle, was a very, very good player. Arguably the best right back in the country. But no, I think it's down to Rodgers. If you look at the 12 or odd games that he had at the end of last season after he came in, if he had been there for the whole season with the same record, they'd have finished up with 16 points more and been 5th in the league. They're a good team. They are a very good team. They're full of good players. You look at that back line and you think, well, actually, there aren't many better back lines than that. Pereira, Evans, the Turkish guy whose name I've forgotten, and Chilwell. That's a very good back line, that is. And you go through the team and they're superb. They're a very, very good team.
I mean, don't forget, Johnny Evans is an ex-Man United player.
Well, yeah. That's the irony, isn't it? They paid 80 million for one of the centre halves, left the ex-Man United player there, and he's performing certainly as well as Maguire, probably better. They're a good team. They know what they're doing. They're set up well. They're following a plan, and they're good players. It's not just about coaching and shape and tactics. They're actually very good players there.
I mean, they've got Jerry Vardy, who's retired from international football because he's of an age. You'll like this because it's a statistic that proves your Messi is better than Ronaldo argument. Vardy has scored 85 goals, Jamie Vardy, 85 goals in 183 Premier League matches. When Cristiano, was in the Premier League, he scored 1 goal less, 84, in 196 matches. So that's 13 games more. Yeah. Took in 13 games more to score 1 goal less. Jamie Vardy's better than Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, no, he isn't. Because at that time in Ronaldo's career, he was playing as a left wing and he was creating chances as well as scoring them. So even
you'll admit that.
Yeah,
okay.
Oh, no. Yeah, is Ronaldo better than Vardy? Yes, he is.
Yeah.
But Vardy he's 32 years old. He's having a great season. Yeah. I mean, physically, he should be waning, shouldn't he? He should be struggling to make those runs because his pace is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he scored twice against Newcastle, but then they put 5 past Newcastle. I want to talk about Newcastle because I was listening to, I think it was on Talk Sport, a Newcastle fan, very angry, as you can imagine they are, phoned in, but he came up with quite an interesting argument. He said, you can't blame Steve Bruce, who, by the way, I don't think is as good as many people, Newcastle fans are hoping. He said, you can't blame Steve Bruce, you've got to blame the owner, Mike Ashley. He said, Mike Ashley repeatedly says that he does not get involved in the footballing side of it. However, after Benitez, who, according to this caller, did all he possibly could, Newcastle punched above their weight under his leadership. After he left and before they appointed the new manager, they sold 3 of their best players. Rondon, who was their top scorer and player of the season, like it or not, he was their top scorer. They sold him to China. They signed a new striker who was not experienced in the Premier League, so actually was interfering with the football side of it.
Oh, very much so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Pereira, who's so good for Leicester, he came from Newcastle. Joe Linton, who's the striker you referred to, it was that purchase that was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as Benitez is concerned. Because Benitez, back in the January transfer window, said no, he's not worth it. He's only ever got 1 goal in 4 matches. Now that's playing in his home league back in South America, but it's not one of the big football nations. 1 in 4. Then he came to Europe. He was 1 in 4. Then where did he go? Yeah, Hoffenheim, where for a year and a half he was useless. So they sent him on loan to Rapid Vienna. 1 goal in 4 in the Austrian league. 1 goal in 4
in Austria.
It's not even good in Austria, in the Austrian league.
Which, let's be honest, is sort of like League One or lower Championship.
Exactly. So why did Ashley want to spend £40 million? 1 in 2 strikers like Haller at West Ham. 1 in 2 strikers go for 40 million. 1 in 4 strikers go between 15 and 20 million. So why did he pay more than twice the going rate for this striker, who, incidentally, his loan fee at Rapid Vienna was £650,000 a year, and his agent was marketing him at £1.5 million. £1.5 million. His agent had him on the market at.
Wow.
Why did Ashley spend £40 million for a player he could have bought for £1.5 million?
Far be it from me to suggest anything corrupt or something. Obviously, like this caller said into the radio talk sport, Ashley said he wasn't involved in the football side of it, got rid of their best players and signed this guy suspiciously for twice the price, let's be honest. I mean, Newcastle and Watford are battling to be the 2 worst teams. I mean, it's like they're having a little competition.
Well, no, I don't think that's fair. Watford have actually played very well. You look at their match against Wolves the other day, 14 shots from inside the penalty area. So they're creating the chances. They're just not finishing them off. There's another stat. Only City, Chelsea and Liverpool have had more shots this season than Watford.
So what are you saying, that they're unlucky?
Well, they're a mixture of bad luck and their strikers aren't good enough. If they had a good striker, they'd be nowhere near the bottom. They'd be challenging for the Everton Cup, which Leicester have taken themselves out of. Leicester can't compete for that anymore. But Watford would be challenging for it, as predicted here.
Stefano Okaka, who is a Watford striker, and you're saying they've got all these shots in the box but can't score. He scored the only goal on loan at Udinese against Bologna this weekend, just gone.
Yeah.
They've got a striker on loan at Udinese and they can't score goals. Is he going to get called back in January? And why is it Udinese?
Why is it Udinese? Because the Pocho family own Watford and they own Udinese. That's the reason why Udinese.
So it's costing them nothing, kind of thing. It's just moving money about.
Yeah, no, they're not moving money about. It's a brilliant model they've got, and they're being very honest, and there's no fraud involved at all, but they are moving players around. And they used to have a Spanish team, and I can't remember which one it is, but they sold the Spanish team last season. So they were doing it between 3 clubs, and now they're only doing it between the 2. So you can imagine that in January, if he's a good striker, and Watford need him, he'll be back. Because Udinese are going to finish 10th or 8th, because they always do.
The sort of finish that Watford dream of at the moment.
Well, yeah.
So they're similar teams, basically, is what you're saying.
Very similar teams, yeah.
So Watford are better than they look. Newcastle are at least as bad as they look.
Oh, Newcastle are. Newcastle are buoyed by that one result against Spurs, which was just something happened in the force or something. It was just,
there was a bad day in the universe because as a Tottenham fan, I don't understand how that happened. I don't think there's any football pundit or analyst or expert or coach or whatever could explain how that happened, because it's the only 3 points they've got this season.
Yeah, I mean, they are a terrible team. They're a terrible team full of very bad players who are not coached very well by a manager who, let's face it, he's there because all the people that Ashley telephoned to say, do you want to come, all turned him down. And Bruce was the only one to say yes. I mean, that's the reality. That's actually what happened. It appears he was positioning himself last week he was getting his excuses in early, saying, "Oh, well, Benitez had them playing this way, and I don't think that's right, and the players can do more, and they can be more expressive." Blah 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 blah. Well, they can't. They cannot, because they're not good enough to. And then he's saying, "Oh, they don't understand what I'm saying," and the players are saying, "Oh, well, we don't understand what we're supposed to do." And it got so bad that Bruce has actually cancelled training, and he's going to have a clear the air meeting later this week.
Games.
It's taken him six games to lose the dressing room.
That's incredible. He's probably only seen them about 10 times in total. I mean, there's a couple of funny things about Steve Bruce, or weird things. First of all, I think it's Peter Kenyon, who, of course, ex-Man United and Arsenal, has put together a bid to buy Newcastle from Mike Ashley, who is selling or not selling, who knows. In the brochure, the bid brochure, I believe it's called, you're the businessman, you can explain that. I mean, it's obviously, a pitch, I suppose.
Yes, that's right.
In the bid brochure to attract investors or whatever. He describes Steve Bruce as a manager with unparalleled European success. And Steve Bruce in the same sentence.
And what success was this?
Unparalleled, I don't know. Unparalleled as in nobody has a worse record, or I don't know what he means. But Steve Bruce. And the other thing was, there was on the BBC commentary online when Newcastle were losing that game to Leicester 5-0. The commentators wrote that Steve Bruce is very animated on the touchline, screaming, "Get it to Big Andy."
We'll hit the big man.
The big man, Andy Carroll, the tall guy, who actually has scored more with his feet than he has with his head.
Yeah.
The problem was that Newcastle were taking a throw on the halfway line, and Andy Carroll was on the halfway line. So get it to Big Andy wasn't really the most tactical brilliance that some may have thought.
No, I mean, he was not the best choice, but he was presumably the only choice, because everyone that Ashley wanted turned him down. He's there to do what Ashley says, isn't he? So to be a lightning conductor, if you like. Let's hope the fans have a go at the manager instead of Ashley.
It's kind of like the Newcastle job's a poison chalice without the chalice, I suppose. I mean, there's nothing good about it, is there?
No, not at the moment.
People say, and we joke on this programme about players and managers going to China for the culture, which Benitez has now done. It's almost like, he took again, the poison chalice. He took a job where he couldn't win. He did everything he possibly could, Rafa Benitez, to get Newcastle into a position higher than they deserve. He stayed longer than they deserved. For him to now, I mean, it's almost like he threw his hands in the air and said, "You know what? Evil wins. I'll take the money and go to China, because I've done as much good as I possibly can, and it's got me nowhere. No good deed goes unpunished."
Oh, well, absolutely. And that team should have been relegated in either of the last 2 seasons. They're that bad. And it's a testament to Benitez. And probably the best thing he's done in his career so far was keeping Newcastle in the Premier League.
Newcastle, they've got Steve Bruce. Maybe it's time for it'll be Sam Allardyce time too. I mean, he this week was talking about how bad Man United were, and he's never seen a weaker Man United team, possibly setting himself up for the job to save them from relegation. Would Sam Allardyce be better than Steve Bruce, or it doesn't matter who the manager is at Newcastle?
I don't think it matters. They're bad players. They are.
When you say week in, week out on the radio show we do for 93.6 Global Radio here on the Costa del Sol, you use the term Newcastle are a terrible team.
They are.
You said that on the radio show last Saturday before they played on the Sunday. They went one better, really, didn't they? They're a very terrible team.
No, they are. And Allardyce is a decent coach if you want a certain sort of thing, which is safety. Right?
Yeah,
if safety is what you're after, Allardyce is your man. But you have to have the tools to work with. And you look at that squad, and no, there isn't anybody there to work with. It's bad.
Yeah, I don't know why I get in sort of picture in my mind of, if you've got some sort of, sales company, Allardyce would always be the security guard. He wouldn't be your go-ahead salesperson. But at Newcastle, he'd be a security guard on a business with no locks.
I'm very confident they will go down, as the bottom team and adrift by a long way.
So Newcastle definitely going down. We've said it before. It just compounds it every week, doesn't it?
Yes.
Watford too good to go down.
I think they are. Yeah.
All right.
They're creating chances and a lot of chances too. So it will. I think it'll come good.
It's got to come good. And it's not to do with changing managers. It's just they're going through a bad patch, a little bit like Tottenham were or are going through a bad patch. Yeah. It's just a a glitch in the matrix or something, and they shouldn't be where they are. You get it every other season. Maybe Aston Villa will go down this season, and people will say they're too good to go down, but you're only as good as your points. But possibly Watford are too good to go down.
I think Watford are, and Villa, they're strange. There is enough there to make you think they can stay up and stay up comfortably. But they keep going ahead and then losing from leading positions. They've got to stop that.
First day of the season, they went ahead at Tottenham and lost 2-1. But Tottenham really struggled, as they did this weekend, to win 2-1 against Southampton, of all people. I mean, another team that possibly should be relegated. But Villa, they keep scoring, they keep going ahead. They just haven't got enough to stay ahead.
That's right.
They drew with your team, West Ham, 2-2.
Yeah,
Good, probably a good point for Villa. When the schedule came out at the beginning of the season, they might have said, we've just come up, we'll take that. But they're better than that as well, aren't they?
They are better than that, and they've got some good players. I mean, McGinn and Grealish, for example.
Grealish, yeah.
There was talk during the summer of, Manchester United were looking at McGinn and the 50 million that Aston Villa were asking for him. And in the end, Man United didn't go ahead with it. The more games are played, the more McGinn looks worth 50 million. And Grealish.
Tottenham actively pursued Grealish, and he even himself talked about moving to Tottenham.
I think Grealish would be a great buy for Tottenham.
Yeah, I think he'd fit. He's definitely a Tottenham-esque kind of player.
Yeah, but they've got to learn how to stop giving goals away. And when you look at who their assistant manager is, you think that would be quite easy, wouldn't it?
Well, yes, of course it is John Terry, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think people often forget that John Terry is at Villa, and being the, terrier of a defence kind of selfish player in the sense of not giving away too many goals, you'd think they'd have a very good defensive coach there.
Well, just think, if John Terry had been in the position that Granit Xhaka was in last night, do you think he'd have ducked out of the way of the ball?
Well, that's another thing. Actually ducking out of the way of the ball. When your instinct as a player is to put your head on the ball. That's your instinct. He went against his instinct to get his head out of the way of that shot. I mean, I call that.
Extraordinary.
I said it last night, and it's a strong word to use, but within the context of football, it counts. I said that's cowardly.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes.
Any player that ducks down, unless there's some particular instruction from the goalkeeper, who ducks down when faced with a free kick because he doesn't want to hit. One of the commentators on the TV said, if it hits you in the face and hurts, let it hit you in the face. The worst that he should have done was let it hit him in the face. What his job was to head it up and over the goal.
Exactly.
And he actually ducked down, and I think that's extreme cowardice. I do. I think that's a terrible piece of defending.
And this is the guy that they voted to be the captain. That's not what captains do.
No. We're talking there about Steve Bruce and Sam Allardyce and managers. The little point I want to make is about a fella who deserves a little mention, Johnny McKinstry. Now, Johnny McKinstry's just been appointed the new head of the Ugandan national team. He's the first Northern Irishman to take charge of 3 national sides. He's only 34. He's from Lisburn in Northern Ireland. He was manager of the Bangladeshi Premier League team, Saif Sporting Club. He's also been manager of Rwanda and Sierra Leone. He was manager of Sierra Leone when he was just 27, the youngest ever international manager in the world. Incredible, but first of all, I said to you before we came on air, it's quite incredible. Young lad, 27, from Northern Ireland, obviously got his coaching badges early, would end up in Sierra Leone and then Rwanda and Bangladesh. Does he like danger? But you've got a different take on it.
Well, I think he likes working.
He's a hard-working guy.
But FIFA have programs where they will finance these head coach positions for the if we can call them lesser footballing countries. Because if they take McKinstry there, then he will come basically with a budget, with money from FIFA to pay him, and that's one of the things which FIFA do to help these. Spread the money from the big countries to the smaller countries. And I think it's a great program. And there are a lot of managers around who are in those positions on that basis. And McKinstry is one of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's just taken charge of Uganda, which sounds like a thankless task. I mean, they're 80th in the FIFA World Rankings, which puts them in the bottom.
Halfway.
So, I mean, he took Rwanda up to 50th. So he's obviously a decent manager. I mean, you're saying this is kind of like, I don't know, the European Union sponsor projects all around Europe.
Right. It's exactly what it's like, yes.
So it's like that. So it's like there's an advert in Managers Monthly and Jose Mourinho's flicking through the magazine going, Manchester United, nope, not that again. Real Madrid, think about it. Rwanda. And then it's obviously FIFA have put the advert in, kind of thing.
Yeah,
almost exactly like that.
No, it is exactly like that, yes.
That's fascinating. So that's actually FIFA actually supporting, if you like, grassroots football or poorer nations. They're actually doing something positive.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then balancing it out by giving the World Cup to Qatar, just in case anybody got the wrong impression. In other news around football, Liverpool, Geoff, could actually be expelled from the Carabao Cup, which I'll explain once again for everybody else who doesn't care, is the old Football League Cup or the Milk Cup or whatever it used to be called, because they fielded an illegible player when they beat the MK Dons last week. They won 2-0, winning ugly again, because they only just got past Sheffield United at the weekend. Apparently, it's an administrative issue, according to the club, but it's a Spanish guy called Chirivella, who's 22, made his first Liverpool appearance back in May, been out on loan at wonderfully named Dutch team called Go Ahead Eagles.
Go Ahead Eagles, yeah. That's a great name, that is.
I don't know if that's bad translation, because...
No, that's their name.
That is actually in English, yeah. No, Go Ahead Eagles.
That's right,
It sounds like after you, go ahead.
Yes.
No, please, after you.
It's supposed to be positive.
No, it's like, come on, you Eagles, or something.
Exactly,
but he was on loan at Go Ahead Eagles, but the EFL are saying that they're considering the matter. In a similar issue in 2014, Sunderland were fined by the Premier League and the EFL when they fielded an illegible player in 4 matches and a League Cup match. So it would be lovely to see, as a Tottenham fan, it would be lovely to see Liverpool expelled from a cup competition. But if Sunderland did it in 4 matches and a League Cup match and only got a fine, I suppose Liverpool will just get a slap on the wrist.
Well, I don't think Liverpool should get a slap on the wrist or a fine, to be honest, because it isn't their fault. Liverpool did everything that they should do administratively to have this player registered. The fault lies with the FA, who did not do what they should have done. Now, if Liverpool committed a fault at all, it was in not checking that the player had been registered and therefore not being able to play. But it wasn't their fault. They did everything they should have done, except maybe checked afterwards. But as they said, nobody ever checks afterwards because you think the FA do what the FA should do.
So the fault is not with it. I mean,
it's really not their fault at all, no.
I think their punishment should be a very heavy punishment. They should be made to play in the Carabao Cup every year.
Yeah, or maybe be fined €300.
So that's Liverpool. I mean, probably just be a little slap on the wrist for an administrative error. In other news, Geoff, normally, if you get 8 red cards in a game, that's the end of the game.
Well, it must be the end of the game because each team must have at least 8 players on the pitch, yeah.
Right, so obviously that would be the end of the game.
Impossible. But this was quite unusual, wasn't it? It was a conference match, or National League, or whatever it's called, between Yeovil and Bromley. And in the 84th minute, the referee sent off a ball boy.
Right.
He sent him off for not giving the ball back quickly enough or something.
Not being a ball boy, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, presumably he's kicking the ball into the stadium or, into the stands or something. And the referee, Aaron Jackson, decided that the ball boys around the pitch had all been instructed to slow the ball up when it suited their team. And so in the 85th minute, he gave them all red cards.
He sent all the ball boys down the tunnel.
All of them down the tunnel. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. So,
and in the 90th minute, the match was held up while the referee ran from where he was to get the ball to give it back to the player.
Because there were no ball boys.
Because there were no ball boys. Because he sent the ball off.
Petard.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Brilliant. He actually gave a red card to all the ball boys. That was in the National League. I think the result was... the result of that, I think, in the end was 3-1 to Yeovil, but I think the people, probably very few people, in that National League game, the people that were there will all forever remember the ball boys getting... I mean, the ball boys are all under 16, aren't they? Well,
yeah.
I mean, their parents must be so proud. What did your son do this weekend? Got sent off.
I don't know if any of you remember that there's a comedy programme called The Vicar of Dibley, and one of the characters is played by an actor called Trevor Peacock, who's a Royal Shakespeare Company actor, and he's the guy who goes, no, yes.
Oh, yes,
right?
yes.
Now, he is the father of a boy who played with me in the same team same Sunday League team. We played Sellotapes. It was the Sellotapes factory team. The league supplies a referee. Each team supplies a linesman. Now, in this particular match against Hyde United, Trevor was going to be the linesman, so it was always going to be funny. Okay. And this referee was terrible. He wasn't biased against us or biased against Hyde United. Every single tackle was a foul.
He was biased against football.
Oh, biased against football. He was just absolutely shocking. 2/3 of the way through the first half, Trevor walks onto the pitch with a notebook and proceeds to book the referee.
Superb.
Anyway, the upshot of that was the referee then reported our team to the league. We all got sent off.
No.
After the event, yeah. And my mother, who was with us, she used to take me to football, he included all the supporters. So my mother was officially a football hooligan.
That is a brilliant story, and I think possibly the best way to end this particular podcast. We now have the answer to your trivia question.
Okay, West Germany in 1954 won the World Cup. And there was something about it that was unique and never happened before and will almost certainly never happen again. And that is that they were all amateurs. West German football did not become professional until 1962.
So wait, let's just get this clear, because obviously, since the World Cup started, nations have sent what they consider their best players to be in a national team. Those best players have generally played in the top league of that country, and therefore, ipso facto, etc., are professional players.
They were professional, yeah.
And yet, back not so long ago, 60 years ago, 65 years ago, whatever, West Germany's team were a team of amateurs.
Yeah. I mean, Belgium, for example, didn't become professional till the 1970s.
That's incredible. You just imagine, don't you?
Yeah.
That all these leagues are developed. But just quickly before we finish, there is a reason why the West German League was amateur.
Yeah, when the Nazis took power in the 1930s, they used football and athletics and other sports as a sort of marketing tool for Nazism. And as a consequence, at the end of the war, how can I put this? People congregating together was frowned on and was actually illegal. So professional football, organised football, was just not allowed at all. And it wasn't until a year after when the people who would become the football authorities petitioned the Allies to say, look, we just want to play football. It's not to do with getting Nazis together or anything, that they were allowed to start. And then that's how the whole process then started. Just before 1962, when the Bundesliga was founded, Hertha Berlin were thrown out of what was then the German league and banned and disbanded as a club, because they did pay a player. So they took their amateurism really seriously. So because of that, Hertha Berlin. Now, when the Bundesliga was started, they came back again as a club. German professional football started in 1962 with Bundesliga.
So basically, crowds weren't allowed to gather at football games in any great numbers.
Yes.
So Arsenal would have been fine.
Arsenal would have been okay.
Yeah. We'll finish on that note. This has been yet another episode of the football podcast, Karle and Kenners. A big thank you to Geoff Saunders. Thank you, Geoff.
You're very welcome.
To find out how we did in our predictions for all last week's games and to see what we think is going to happen in the coming week, get yourself to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Karle and Kenners, or just search Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar on the online internet-y thing.
We'll be back with episode 19 next week here on Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar, the football podcast.
You've been listening to Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar. Join us again next week for more of their twisted football news, all of their weird football views. You can find them here every week on Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar. We'll see you again shortly.